What is going on, everybody? And in this video, we are giving a state of the market in stock picks for August 17th, 2022. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, consider subscribing, as we do provide daily and weekly updates to get you prepared for the day and the week ahead in this glorious market. Yes, very intriguing market. One which we are pushing up very, very well. But as you can see, technical wise, we're kind of hitting the top here and wicked back pretty good. One thing is to keep in mind here is something I talked about yesterday. If we can get above that 4,300, I think we could potentially start reversing this thing to some extent. But we do have the FOMC meeting notes tomorrow. That comes at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's going to give us insight into the last FOMC meeting that essentially we dished out another 75-point basis move. So we had two 75-point basis moves back to back, very historic. Does the market care? Not really. But it was interesting today. With everything that's going on, the bonds, the yield curve inversion has been happening for quite a while. The dollar is still up quite a bit, even though oil is coming down. A lot of things are in the housing sector. Matter of fact, they are starting to see some lows that they haven't seen in a while. So you're starting to see some things turn, which is interesting nonetheless. Housing in itself is a very lagging market. You're not going to get the full-on crashes. Typically, normally it's a prolonged dip per se with housing, but nonetheless, today there was I can't remember what exact time it was. Towards the back half of the day, we kind of get some scares about. Because of the yield curve inverting, that the Fed again could start getting very hawkish. That talk started to come up, and it kind of dropped the market. The market's been pushing up fairly good, aside from there was some stalling on the way up. We're trying to break through resistance. But the market is continuing to do it. Again, I think it's trying to capitalize on this period in which there are no data, in my opinion, that has weight. And there's also no Fed meeting for a while. So the market, I think, is trying to take advantage as much as it can at this point. So where does that pretty much put us? Well, right now, since essentially July, we've been pushing up pretty much nonstop. Again, no news is good news, pretty much. We expected a 75-point basis move. We got it. Again, if it's not sticker shock when it comes to any kind of bad news, it's not out of left field, something unexpected, it's not going to do anything. Yes, we know everything is gone to shit, and we are pretty much going to push from that point. So with that being said, what are we looking at, Ro? Right now, I think one of the biggest things here is that tech is stalling a bit in some aspects, but you have the banks pushing pretty steadily. Energy is starting to dial back a little bit, but you did have Walmart, and they did well, extremely well. And so I think that was a bigger concern. Something I've talked about coming into this week was we needed Walmart and Target to do well. Even though I think they're losing like $1 billion or some dollars on inventory, they are still somehow doing well, essentially for the insight for the most part. Is they're still seeing customers, and that's what matters. Ultimately, even though there's that big hit because of supply, and we talked about the supply being an issue, having oversupply and not enough demand, and then continuing that cycle into new seasons and trying to get stuff off the shelf. But there's a lot of misdirecting information. This is why I'm saying a lot of times if there's too much misdirecting information, the market will just take it for whatever it's worth and just go by design. So currently right now, we do still need to break up over this I'm afraid it's lining up towards the meeting notes. If something comes of that, we could sell. We need a healthy pullback. Now, what do we mean by healthy? Now, this is a strong support, roughly around the 4,200. I think we could pull it down there. Now, I'm looking at a higher time frame, but it's not saying it's going to happen in one day. But I could see us selling off, kind of cooling off a little bit, especially kind of heading into the next quarter. And then from that point, we could start pushing up again, potentially, right? It really just depends on the core CPI and what goes from there. And then from that core CPI, we can determine or kind of gauge where the Fed's going to be at that point. So again, maybe there's insights tomorrow that will start to sell off. Could potentially happen. Again, I think to pretend like nothing else is going on, the housing industry and around the world, some places are getting better, some aren't. But again, considering the dollar has not moved, that does not help other countries right now. It may help the U.S., but globally, we all work globally and understand how much of an impact that has on the world. So we're going to, again, have to continue to see what happens going forward. Again, this isn't really fun times because we've been getting a lot of chop mostly. We'll get some moves periodically, but for the most part, it's just been the move happens almost overnight or the first hour of the day. Sometimes the last hour of the day, but everything in between is pretty much chop is kind of what you're dealing with. So, but looking at, we can take a look at Bitcoin real quick. Again, still needing to break roughly around this 25 mark. And then you got that, again, that 30K mark. So waiting for that to potentially play out. Again, you look at higher time frames. This could be considered a bear flag here, but we have to see ultimately right here. Monthly time frame. Again, you can still push up roughly to the 30K and get a hard rejection there. We haven't even really retested. Looks like a bear flag on the monthly. So we'll have to see what happens with Bitcoin. And again, the Bitcoin started selling off too when there's potential talk that the inflation could be coming down. So I don't know if Bitcoin is going to be that inflation hedge that people are concerned that they're buying more in, or now that people think inflation's coming down, will Bitcoin start to sell off? And so that's kind of something to watch. I think going into these big pumps that we had, that was a big determining factor was the fact that people were using Bitcoin as an inflation hedge. And now that it's not saying that right, we couldn't find a newer low wherever that is now. More that is currently where we're sitting at, or perhaps a little bit lower on that 10K mark, and just kind of consolidate for the next bigger pump. We'll have to see. Again, time will always tell. Again, the dollar's sitting on 106. It's still extremely elevated. We have to. It really has to come down, to be honest, or else I think it's going to drive us more in a recession. Oil is come down, but it is still very high. There's always something. Again, the Fed has announced this, right? The Fed's been transparent about this to some extent. They're very misleading on what they say, but that we're going to have inflation for a while. Even though it does come down, it doesn't mean we're going to have high inflation. We're still going to have high inflation, and that's the problem. Is if there's continued to be a high inflation, how much does that push the Fed to raise? How much more of a rate increase are they going to continue to push until something gets better? Microsoft is continuing to lay off people. Those are other things to consider as well. You have to kind of see read between the lines here and kind of really see what's going on. Even though, again, the market really isn't. The market is in the economy, so it's always something to keep in mind. Tesla get a nice little bump back up, but it is really having trouble trying to break this 940 mark. So we want to see if we can. It does look promising. This could be a nice potential push up to 1K again for Tesla, but we have to see. Again, looking at the monthly, there are definitely higher time frames. You don't really have much space. You could get to that 970 and then could get rejected there and the seller make a higher low here on the monthly. something to watch there. But we did get a little bit of selling in the morning. But aside from that, again, this thing is pretty tired, right? It had a nice run up. Now we again, like I keep saying, we could see that 850 here pretty soon, and then maybe just play as a range until next cycle, or unless something changes with inflation or the Fed. Again, I can see this consolidation here. It's a wide consolidation range, but again, you do have the split, I believe, on the 25th. So once that happens, this range might be condensed even more than what it currently is. So you're looking essentially at almost a 100-point spread here. Could be reduced to a 50-point spread, and I'll get it much tighter. Could potentially happen. So MP is one I want to watch. I do have a small position in this. I do think it has earnings towards the end of the week. I think this is going to pump, especially on earnings. There has been data to show that companies have been looking for cheaper options, and whatever cost that may be. So kind of watching that sector as well, and seeing if they get a big earnings coming up. So kind of why I want to keep an eye on MP. As far as retail is concerned, everything else is pretty much flat. There's not really much else pushing. Let's take a look at BA. BA, nice pump today. Got rejected off the 200. This is something where a lot of these are starting to hit these 200 moving averages for the first time. I expect these things to kind of sell back off and then retest the 50 EMA, so the 156. Again, daily, this thing hasn't been moving quickly up, so I kind of really don't expect it, even though it's been moving up quite a bit since July, middle of July. Looking for these things to kind of pull back, retest some of these levels. It needs to, or else we continue to run parabolic. Just means that elevator down is going to be a lot faster, in my opinion. Look at the banks, JPM. Again, they still look pretty solid, but nothing is pushing up too dramatically. Again, there's no news to really drive these. A lot of talk about potential inflation and potential Fed dialing back on rate raises. If we do get some kind of information on Fed dialing back on rate raises, that could cause the market to go into more of a rally. Again, the more rally can build between now and the next core CPI report would be great. But we'll have to see. Everything's a hurry up and wait and see on the Fed. And the whole year has pretty much been based off of that. And we've already had a big rally. Hardly had any pullback. So again, that's my concern. The more we continue to rally and get crazy, the closer it is to stalling and elevator down. So that's one thing. When the market starts getting at levels like this, where it starts running just absurdly like this, I kind of just wait. There's no point jumping in. That's why I don't give a lot of call outs during this time. I try not to do call outs anyway, but or have a lot of picks around this time and kind of go over general market sentiment, talk about the different industries, because of the fact that I want it to pull back. It needs to pull back. It'll pull back eventually, right? And I think it'll pull back pretty hard. When I talk about a healthy pullback, I'm talking about a pretty decently sized pullback. So even if I'm talking about GS here, that's still about a 7% pullback. That'd be a healthy pullback for me. For it to bounce off support, what it was old resistance is now support, and then continue up, pushing forward. So again, if the Fed talk about dialing back rates, again, that can feel more, right? We don't have any news, if you get any somewhat positive news, the market is really going to run off that hopium. So you got to be really mindful of that, because if you're still trying to short the market, you should not be fighting momentum at this point, because the market is purely driven off of hopium right now. And again, any positive sentiment's going to amplify that move. And any positive sentiment's going to amplify that move. So just be mindful of that. But with that being said, I think I'm going to end it there. There's nothing else I'm really watching. A lot of the same stuff. It's just waiting to see. The report could go either way. My thing is there could be information in there leading that more possible rates for some unannounced reason could sell off the market. Again, it's digestion. Tomorrow you're going to get a fake move, or perhaps they think they talk about dialing back, if that's another big thing that could come from that report. and could move the market a lot. So watch that to report again tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There is no Powell tomorrow. It's just going to be a report that comes out, and then take it from that point. But if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Go ahead and drop a like button. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.